Yesterday, Lilth announced the new infantry commander Liu Che coming to the game in the next anniversary update. So today we'll be discussing him. I will discuss whether or not I think he's going to be the new permanent infantry commander, or will there be other ones to come. I will discuss a bit about his skills, and I'll go over some testing results which I have with me that will pretty much give us his best pairs as well, and if he's really going to be a good open field commander. So if you want to know all about Liu Che and if he's really that good or if he's not even that strong, you definitely want to check out the rest of the video. Now let's begin by discussing Liu Che's skills, and for his active skill here, he has a rage requirement of 1000 and he deals smite damage to 5 targets in an arc, damage factor 2250. Every additional target reduces damage dealt, which is typical, and also troops hit by this active skill have their march speed reduced by 40% for 3 seconds. So what I'm really seeing in this skill is, first of all, he's got an AoE stronger than ZHUGE, which is absolutely insane. That is really, really strong. And it's to 5 targets. It is not a circle AoE, it is in an arc, which could be a little bit different. I'm presuming an arc is like Ethelflaed's fan-shaped area, kind of, but a little bit smaller. So just a normal AoE, for example, it would be YSG's unexpertise AoE, is what I'm presuming we'd be seeing here. The damage factor of 2250, like I said before, is really good. The weird thing here, though, is the smite damage, because what I've seen, smite damage only gets buffed from normal attack, and doesn't really count as skill damage. So does that mean any commanders with skill damage reductions are pretty much bypassed, as in, like, they aren't affected by the smite damage, like the smite damage able to bypass that? So for example, Ramses with his 40% skill damage reduction just doesn't get his skill damage reduction against Liu Che? Maybe. That'd be insane. So if smite damage is actually like a form of skill damage that's not really skill damage, that would be really, really interesting, where he can pretty much bypass all these skill damage reductions that all commanders have. So a commander like Henry as well, who gets like a 35% skill damage reduction on his active skill, would pretty much become redundant if this smite damage doesn't count as that skill damage. The next thing to note here is the march speed reduction is really, really strong. 40% reduction to 5 targets for 3 seconds is extremely good. I mean, this is William level march speed reduction on the active skill, actually better than William's, and it's in an arc, so it's much easier to hit people. Plus, you'll see later he's able to cycle his skills way quicker, so Liu Che's active skill already looking extremely strong. Now, as for his second skill, this is pretty much his main stat skill. This is where he's going to get a bunch of his, like, just pure stats. First of all infantry units gain 20% increased defense. That is nice. And if he contains only infantry units, they also get 20% march speed and take 20% less skill damage. So he's getting a nice skill damage reduction there, but if smite becomes a new thing, that's not going to be as good. But I doubt that smite's going to become like a everywhere thing. I think it would just be just for Liu Che, but 20% less skill damage is nice, 20% increased march speed is really, really good, and 20% increased defense is solid. So really solid stats right there, 60% of total stats. I'm really liking the march speed and the skill damage reduction, especially since it's not like it triggers or you have to be out of territory. It's just have all infantry units, which most people who are running Liu Che will do. As for his third skill, he gains 20% increased attack when fighting other troops. So not when fighting barbarians, but most players don't really need to worry about that. And then also, whenever he launches a normal attack, it has a 25% chance to deal additional smite damage, damage factor 300 to the target, cooldown of 5 seconds. So you'll probably see this trigger maybe 3 times per skill cycle, maybe 2 actually. You probably see this triggered around 2 times per skill cycle. Now the smite damage really isn't too high here, only a possible damage factor of 300. You'll maybe get it to trigger 2 times the skill cycle, so 600 extra damage factor. That's only single target. It's not bad, but it's not insane. And attack, it's not too insane either. I mean, really he is kind of lacking on defensive stats is what I've seen so far. He has no health. He has no real normal attack damage reductions or damage reductions. He's only got that 1 bit of skill damage taken reduction and that small amount of defense. So looking a bit like a glass cannon commander, kind of like a ZHUGE for infantry in some ways. Then on his fourth skill, he does 10% more normal attack, which means his active skill will actually be affected by this because smite damage is actually going to be boosted by normal attack. So that is interesting. So he's going to be able to deal more normal attack from his base attacks and his active skill. Very, very unique. And whenever he deals smite damage, he reduces the damage dealt by the target for 10% for the next 3 seconds. So that actually does make his third skill a lot more useful now, because you're going to be seeing that his third skill, which is going to give you instant proc smite damage, is also going to give you an instant proc all damage reduction. So that is really, really strong the more you think of it. And also that means his AoE is going to pretty much give a ZHUGE debuff. Keep in mind, he's in a passive slot here, so that will stack with ZHUGE, which is probably the best thing about this skill. You don't have to worry about it overlapping with ZHUGE. It's its own debuff, and it will stack. So he's really seeming like a ZHUGE here, except he's got a march speed reduction, and he's a lot less tanky, in my opinion. Now, as for Liu Che's expertise, it is only one small sentence, and it says, whenever he launches a normal attack while on the map, he has a 25% chance to launch an extra normal attack. And that might not sound insane, but it is probably one of the most powerful skills I've seen on any commander to date. And the reason is we've only just seen this whole extra normal attack very recently in the Golden Kingdom. And the only time you could access it is if you set your commander's rage requirement to pretty much 4,000. Like, you had to have 4,000 rage requirement to get this extra normal attack. Maybe it was like 2,500. I'm exaggerating, but still, you had to have over double the rage cap pretty much to launch an extra normal attack. But Liu Che's active skill only requires 1,000 total rage, and here's where the issue comes in. He can get extra rage. Every 4 turns, pretty much, he's going to get an extra 100 rage, which is ridiculous rage gain. That is super, super powerful rage gain, actually. That's insanely good. Plus, there is actually a possibility here that this 25% chance to launch also applies on the extra normal attack, which is insane. If that is the case, pretty much what's going to happen is he's going to keep on rolling and rolling that over, and it, in theory, could go to an infinite number. I doubt that would ever happen, but in theory, you could get hit by a Liu Che, and it could just drop like 30,000 like normal attack into you, which is insane. I doubt that would really happen. I'm sure there is a cap. Maybe you can get 2 extra normal attacks. I reckon it is capped at only 1, but he seems like this expertise is really, really essential to really boost his kit, because yes, he seems powerful without it, but this expertise adds such a massive amount to his kit that I think it is definitely essential to get, because 25% chance to launch an extra normal attack means 25% chance to gain more rage, 25% chance to deal a whole extra possible 1,000 damage, so really, 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 really strong skill right there, and I am very, very surprised that they added this onto an open field commander. One thing to note here is I don't actually know if the extra normal attack will increase his rage cap, because if it doesn't, he's easily going to blow over and you'll get maybe an extra 10 rage. But if an extra normal attack does technically count as like an extra turn in some ways, then he will actually get his own rage cap, which is really, really nice. Plus, with this extra normal attack, that kind of means that any commanders with abilities that have a certain % chance to trigger whenever you do normal attacks are going to work really well with Liu Che, because you're looking at a commander who is able to have extra normal attacks to have that extra chance of throwing off those abilities. So, for example, Alexander the Great will work quite well with him, purely because you're going to be able to throw that instant proc damage a fair bit often, because you're able to get more chances of throwing it due to his above all kings expertise skill. Now that we're done discussing Liu Che's skills, let's move over to the Rise of Kingdoms battle simulator, where I did a bunch of tests for him. Now for these tests, I tried to make them as fair as possible. I ran every single side with 310,000 tier 5 units, and every single side with the Ottoman civilization. I feel most players run the Ottoman civilization nowadays, especially if you're running mixed troops, purely because the Ottoman civilization is a much more versatile civilization where it can work with, for example, infantry, archers, and cavalry. It's not necessarily focused on one troop. The alliance buffs and holy sites and all those buildings were kept the same. You got 15% health, 10% for a rune, and 5% for a city skin. Obviously, the equipment was just a full set for whichever troop type I was doing. So, for example, if I did archers, they'd get a full Dragon Breath set, or if I did infantry, they'd get the full infantry set. So, it was pretty much just a full set for those legendary commanders. I also did a 10% item buff, so a 10% defense buff for each side, with 6% iconic attack, 6% iconic defense, and 12% iconic health for both sides. Both sides were also given VIP level 13 to 16. I feel that's where the majority of players really sit. You don't really see that many players at VIP 17 to 18. Of course, there are a few, but most players are in that 13 to 16 range. And I also gave 40% all damage to simulate actually being inside of a Season of Conquest KVK, because it's going to be mainly where you're going to do fighting, especially with these commanders who are pretty much only available in Season of Conquest. You're probably going to do the fighting with them in Season of Conquest, so it just kind of makes sense to give that slight extra buff. So let's start off with the first battle reports here, and the first one is the Guan Yu with a CPO. This is just a baseline report to get a gauge of how they are performing currently, the infantry commanders, and then we'll see how Liu Che performs. First of all, Guan Yu with CPO did really bad here, lost by over 12,000 sevs. Next report, they didn't lose by 12,000 sevs, they won by 2,000 sevs. Thing with Guan is it's extremely inconsistent. I never ever see a consistent Guan report. One report is losing by 12,000, next report is winning by 2,000. Should literally be impossible, but Guan is super inconsistent. If you can get good silence timing is really good. If you get bad silence timing, you get absolutely wrecked. So he must have got bad silence timing and maybe he didn't get much rage. I don't fully know why this is the case, but you can see Guan is very inconsistent currently. Also, for his fourth report, he lost by around 7,000 sevs. So on average, he's losing more than he is winning, and by a fairly substantial amount. Now, as for Liu Che, this is definitely not the case. I ran this report 6 times. I ran CPO Africanus primary, Liu Che secondary, because I think CPO support tree is slightly better than Liu Che's attack tree, so I felt that CPO is definitely going to be the stronger primary. In the first report, Liu Che won by 8,000 sev wins, which is fairly good, but Guan Yu won by 7,000. It's not too big of a difference. Second report, he won by around 13,007 wounds. That's a lot more than Guan Yu. Keep in mind here, these are double AoE commanders. I know Guan Yu is AoE as well, but Liu Che is a 5-target AoE. Guan Yu is only a 3-target AoE. So really right off the bat, you're seeing already a quite powerful march right here, being able to beat that Nevsky drone by 13,000 sevs. For the third report, once again, it won by around 12,007 wounds here, which is a very, very good trade. Much more consistent than Guan so far. He definitely hasn't lost at all. For the fourth report, once again, very consistent, winning by around 13,000 sevs. We've seen that before. Fifth report, he won by around 7,007 wounds. Once again, fairly consistent with previous results, so much more consistent than Guan, possibly more powerful than Guan, if not the most powerful infantry commander currently. And then the last report, he won by around 11,007 wounds. So you can see right off the bat, Liu Che with CPO is going to annihilate Nevsky, especially compared to the Guan. The Guan Yu with CPO is just completely outclassed at this point. Most players, I'm not even going to recommend Guan Yu anymore. Liu Che is definitely the current infantry meta coming up. Even though he doesn't look like he's going to be too insane, he does look like he's going to be fairly strong, especially for the open field, and he's definitely going to be probably the best secondary to CPO currently in the game. As for the next reports, I decided to try Sargon the Great with Liu Che, and these are pretty much the same as CPO. Keep in mind here, there will be probably around 2,000 to 3,007 win difference, purely because Sargon is extremely good in 1v1 situations. But do keep in mind that CPO's AoE is really, really good on the open field. So that is one upside, downside. I'll discuss that a little bit later. But first of all, with Sargon, first report, winning by around 14,000 sevs, around 14,000, like 14,200. Next report, winning by almost 16,000 sevs, which is very, very nice. I think CPO's best report was winning by around 13,000, but once again, CPO has an AoE, Sargon doesn't, so keep that in mind. But that once again is a much better trade than Guan Yu, and again, still consistent. And on the third report, won again by around 13,000 sevs. And on the last report, once again, won by around 16,000 sev wins, just as the report before. So really, really good performance from Sargon here. Really good in the 1v1 situation. If you're finding him being stuck in 1v1s a lot, Sargon with Liu Che looks like it might be one of, if not the most powerful 1v1 combos currently in the game. Plus, I really like how Sargon's got shielding, etc. It does work quite well with Liu Che. Keep in mind, CPO also does have the shielding, and I'll discuss his pairs a little bit later. We're kind of just looking at the results now. The next reports were Sargon the Great with Liu Che and a Boudica and a ZHUGE. So they're fighting Boudica, ZHUGE, and Boudica, ZHUGE absolutely smoked these guys. Boudica, ZHUGE won the first report by around 24,000 sev wounds. That is ridiculous. Over a 1-2 trade here. Second report was no better, winning by around 21,000 severely wounded units. Once again, absolutely ridiculous. Third report won by around 23,000 severely wounded units. And the fourth report won by almost 20,000 severely wounded units. So Boudica, ZHUGE is absolutely still dominating the Sargon Liu Che. They are definitely not near as overpowered as you'd probably want them to be, because they are losing by such a large margin. This could be due to the special unit. I doubt the special unit is making like a 7,000 sev wound change, because if you want to have a good even report here, you'd be hoping Boudica, ZHUGE is maybe winning by 6,000 to 7,000, not 20,000. So I highly, highly doubt the Ottoman civilization. I think that Liu Che just doesn't carry much to beat ZHUGE, since currently to beat ZHUGE, you need to really outskill damage him in single target damage. That's where Haucheping and Nevsky come in. Liu Che is an AoE damage commander, not necessarily made to beat a Boudica and a ZHUGE in a 1v1 battle. Now, as for CPO Africanus, he didn't fare much better, if not he fared worse, losing by 26,000 sevs on the first report, losing once again by 26,000 sevs on the second report. Pretty much identical numbers here for the first two reports, so CPO with Liu Che definitely is no magic card to beating Boudica, ZHUGE. On the third report, once again lost by around 24,000 severely wounded units. Ridiculous amounts to be losing by. He is not even close to winning. And on the fourth report, he lost by around 24,000 severely wounded units. So you can see right there, Boudica, ZHUGE does seem like it's going to be very dominant over the Liu Che with CPO and Sargon. So do keep that in mind. They are not OP enough to just start beating out ZHUGE, and definitely not OP enough to start beating out Boudica. And they are performing quite poorly, to be honest. They're not even close to a standard I would say is pretty good. They are doing really, really bad against these commanders. The final type of report I ran was against infantry. I did the current main free-to-play low-spender meta, which is Guan Yu with CPO. Most infantry mains are running this march, and Guan Yu CPO lost by quite a bit against Sargon, losing by around 7,000 sev wins on the first report, around 6,000 sev wins on the second report, and around 7,000 sev wins on that third report. So you can see right there, Guan is definitely nowhere near as effective as it used to be, and this was a consistent result. So that kind of means that this is probably where Guan is sitting, around 7,000 sevs weaker than the current meta marchers. As for CPO, he also destroyed the Guan Yu in the CPO, winning by around 11,000 sev wins on the first report, 10,007 wounds on the second report, and again 10,007 wounds on the third report. So Guan Yu pretty much losing by around 10,207 wounds each report here. Very interesting to see that Guan is definitely starting to lose a bit of his effectiveness. Now, after we looked at all those reports, what do I think of Liu Che, the newest infantry commander? Well, he doesn't really look that game-breaking. Like, infantry needed something like release Guan, where when Guan was released, he was like pretty dominant on the open field. For example, when Nevsky was released, Boudica, CPO, all these commanders were released, they were dominant on the field. Infantry hasn't had one of those commanders probably since the release of CPO Africanus, and even then, CPO was dominant, but he wasn't as dominant as Guan Yu, where everyone in the whole entire game owned a Guan Yu. I know a lot of players nowadays who pretty much just skip CPO purely because infantry are such a weak class, and Liu Che doesn't seem like the commander that's really gonna revive infantry. I mean, we don't fully understand his utility yet, plus the normal attack, the extra normal attack, if it does stack, could be ridiculous, and if he gets extra rage out of it, it also could be ridiculous, but it doesn't look like he's going to be that meta-changing. He's gonna be Cavs, which is a good thing. He'll work quite well with CPO. His AoE is fairly decent. It's gonna slow down a lot of people, but is it really going to change much if he loses by 20,007 wounds to a Boudica with a ZHUGE? Honestly, I doubt it. If Boudica's ZHUGE is winning by that much, then that kind of means Liu Che definitely isn't absolute meta breaking and definitely won't be the pure meta commander. As for where I think he will appear, I'm going to guess that after the 7-day login, which is where you'll first unlock him for free, he's either going to be in Sovereign Keys, which is what Chisco actually suggested, and I'm hoping he's in here. That will actually give him some usage because that's where he'll fit best, since Sovereign Keys currently need a strong commander, and he would be the strongest commander in there. Or he's just going to go into the Wheel of Fortune and be one of those commanders that Lilith throws in there. I doubt they're going to pull a Lu Bu where they just make him and then no one can really access him, because this is a historical figure. They don't have to buy the rights to him. He's guaranteed to pretty much stay in the game. So Wheel of Fortune or Sovereign Keys are my best bets. The final thing I'd like to discuss are his best pairs based on the reports. And the first thing I would say is Guan definitely is not in this best pairs list. Doesn't perform nearly as good as you want it to. Yes, he has silence, that is decent, but I'd rather put the Guan with either CPO or Sargon, depending on really which one you don't put with your Liu Che. If you're using Liu Che, then you're probably just going to put him with CPO. It works better than Sargon in my opinion. Plus, I don't mind the Guan Sargon purely because I think that Guan actually benefits more from being a primary commander, and then you could run a CPO as a secondary, but I feel like Sargon is a better secondary than CPO, even though Sargon does have that skill tree. A lot of people seem to see Sargon and just hit him because they're like, he's a debuffing commander, tons of debuffs, tons of single target damage. They want to wipe him out really quickly. So a lot of people hit Sargon first thing. But if you run CPO primary, it's like he's a little bit more tanky. He's not really dealing that much damage, even though it is 2,000, it's only 3 targets, not too crazy. His health debuff is nice, but it's not going to completely destroy us. So people tend to skip CPO before they go for Sargon, which is why I prefer the Guan in front of the Sargon, because Sargon's probably going to get hit anyways, while Guan is going to be there to deal damage. And then your CPO with your Liu Che is going to be able to deal a ton of extra skill damage and inflict a ton of debuffs as well as like a march that people probably start to ignore. Overall, I think his best pair is probably CPO, but he's going to work extremely well with Sargon, especially in 1v1 situations. And I think that he's going to be a fairly decent investment for low spenders and free-to-play players when he finally releases into the game. Now that I've finished ranting about the new infantry commanders, I want you guys to rant about what you think about the new infantry commanders. Do you think they're too weak? Do you think Liu Che should be stronger, weaker? Do you think he should get some type of a rework? Do you think there should be specific things in his kit? What do you think about Liu Che? Is he missing something that you would really like to see? Let me know in the comments. I am really interested to know your guys' view. It does influence what I put in videos. It does influence the Rise of Kingdoms community as a whole, because your comments influence the content I upload and also can influence the responses I give to other people. So let me know in the comments what you think of these new infantry commanders. Will they be good? Will they be game breaking? Or will they just be another dud? Now, I just want to say thank you and I hope to see you in the next one.